All right, there we go. All right, well, welcome everybody. Good to see you all here this evening for this third of our 3 trainings that we've been doing this spring. This one for lay leaders and lay members, Daniel Conference, and church council chairs. And so we're grateful for you being here, and I'm grateful for Cindy Snodgrass and Susan Wheeler being here to lead the lay leader and lay member Daniel Conference portion of this. But let's kick off with a prayer here tonight. Oh, gracious God, we thank you for the day. We thank you for this time together. We're grateful for the ability to join one another from across the miles. And we pray that you would help us to sense your presence here in us and among us and binding us together this evening as we dig into what it means to be leaders in your church. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen. All right. Well, we're going to get started, and Susan and Cindy are our co-district lay leaders for the Eastern South Central Colorado District, and they are going to kick us off with talking about what it means to be a lay leader and a lay member of annual conference. How about it?
Chris, are you going to keep watching for people to come in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, you know what, Susan? I'm going to make you a co-host, actually, just in case.
No, I can't. I'm doing slides. Make Cindy co-host.
Okay, I'll make Cindy the co-host. That's great. All right.
I can't do that many things, Chris. Sorry. Good evening, everybody. Tonight, Cindy and I are here to help you learn a bit more about your position as lay leader and what that entails. I can't teach Marianne anything because I followed her as lay leader. Everything we will share with you is based on the Book of Discipline, paragraph 251, Duties of Lay Leaders and Members. And we hope that you received, if you're a lay leader, a copy of the guidelines. It didn't look like this. It was just Xerox copy file. Anyway, and that if you're a lay leader, a lay member at annual conference, you'll take time to read that and get familiar with it. An effective lay leader functions as the primary representative and role model of Christian discipleship and faith lived out in the church and in daily life. The lay leader works with the pastor to fulfill the mission and vision of the congregation. Okay. And can you see this? No. All right. Let's try.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let me.
Hey, there we go.
All right.
Got it.
The leader should be a growing Christian disciple who understands that everyone has spiritual gifts and experiences that are vital to the body of Christ. I'm going to read a few selected verses from 1 Corinthians 12 and 13. Now, there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. Now you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. And God has appointed in the church first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then deeds of power, then gifts of healing, forms of assistance, forms of leadership, various kinds of tongues. Are all apostles, or all prophets, or all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all possess gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? But strive for the greater gifts, and I will show you still more in a more excellent way. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. So the person benefits from having one or more of these spiritual gifts: compassion, discernment, faith, helping, leadership, and servanthood. And I just want to point out that leadership was really near the bottom of that list. So I anticipate that it's suggesting we be servant leaders. It would be good to take a spiritual gifts assessment to help you learn what your gifts are and how best you can serve. The one that Lay Servant Ministries offers is each one a minister. And it's really good to do that every so many years because your gifts and graces can change over time.
It's important for a lay leader to listen well. Listening is very difficult. Sometimes lots of times it's difficult for me because you're always thinking about what you're going to say to the person instead of actually listening. But without listening, there's no communication that takes place. So a lay leader and a lay member to annual conference needs to listen to the many voices in the church, and to hear what people are saying, and then to be able to communicate their concerns or their ideas to the pastor and to other leaders in the church. Conflict is difficult when someone comes to you with an issue and they're angry or they're confused. But also sometimes people are coming to you with a new idea, a new idea for ministry. And to be open to that is really important. And to be able to then pass that on to someone else is also important. The leader needs to have a broad view of the separate parts of the church, because there are, in every church, people have different ideas of what is most important, different ideas of what is needed. And one example, a couple of months ago, a couple came to me and said, I don't really like the way we've changed, because we have a new pastor. They didn't like the change from just having the collection plate in the back to going back to actually doing the collection and passing the plate down the pews. And they didn't like stopping after the first song for greeting. They thought it broke the flow of our worship service. So I took that to the ad council, and we had, as ad councils do, we don't always decide things in 1 month. You have to bring it back the next month for people to talk about. The consensus was we were going to stay with what we were doing right now. That's what people thought was most important. So then I had to go back and tell the folks that had brought those concerns exactly what we had decided. So that's not always the most fun thing to do, but it's important to get the lines of communication flowing from the members to the pastor, from the members to the ad council. So it's really a good idea to realize that you have many different people with many different ideas about how they want the church to run, and to be able to communicate that to everybody, so we're all on the same page.
The lay leaders should show interest in connecting the congregation with the community and the world as they participate in God's mission to the world through the 4 main charges: the Great Commandment to put love of God and neighbor above all else, the Great Commitment to embody God's love individually through spiritual disciplines, the Great Requirement to live God's love through our actions, and the Great Commission to go and take God's love into the world by making disciples, baptizing, and teaching faithful obedience. Sorry, I can't find my mouse. Two screens always mess me over. The lay leader represents your most important job is you represent the lay people of the congregation in working with the pastor for the mission and vision of the congregation. It's a ministry partnership. As lay leader, you're in touch with congregational concerns and passions and work with your pastor to help folks serve where their passions lie and solve issues that may come up in the church, as Cindy was talking about. Meet and talk with your pastor regularly to understand his or her hopes and dreams for the congregation and for the lay leader's role in advancing toward the vision of ministry. Ask how you can engage in shared ministry for a more vital congregation. The lay leader engages in spiritual disciplines, practices that build a relationship of attentiveness to God's will and direction, reading, meditating, studying scriptures, prayer, fasting, attending worship, living in a healthy manner, and sharing your faith. The lay leader represents the lay people in the congregation and serves as a role model of Christian discipleship for the congregation. My B's for this are be present, be visible, be available, be participatory, and be an example, preferably a good one.
So I see in this chat, Skip is having trouble hearing us. Is that still a problem, Skip?
I just logged in on my phone because I can't seem to get your voice on my laptop. So I'm on the phone.
Okay, great. Good to have you here.
Looking at your charts here, and they look more simplified than in the guideline that I just read.
Yes, they are. Yeah. So a lay leader needs to work with the pastor and the other leaders, kind of like I talked about before, but it's also a good idea to launch or strengthen the ministries that the church has. You know, lots of times I'm not the one that thinks up the things to do. Like, we should have a snack bag for the kids going from the elementary school so that when they go home for Christmas break, they have snacks. That wasn't my idea, but it was a great idea. And it really sparked a lot in our congregation to reach out to the children and in our school district. And we've done that several times. So listening for people, their ideas, and then helping to facilitate that is really important. I keep on saying the word important, but it seems to fit here. A lay leader also assists in advising church council about things that are available in the community and ways to express more effective lay ministry in the church. And a lay leader plans with others to celebrate the ministry of lay people throughout the year, and especially on Laity Sunday. Some things we've done in the past is we've recognized all of the trustees in our church with a little gift and just recognition on Sunday morning and a thank you to them for all of that they've done. We've also done that for the liturgists of the church, given them a little certificate and a thank you, just recognizing them for the important ministry that they do every Sunday morning. The other thing, Laity Sunday is such an important time for me. The last couple years we've done, tell us your story. Who wants to get up and tell a story about their faith or their life or a way God has met them in their everyday trials or travels? And that's been really good way to get laity involved and to celebrate the ministry of laity.
The lay leader meets regularly with the pastor to discuss the state of the church and opportunities for ministry to advance the mission and ministry of the congregation and community. You may establish a formal leadership covenant as the example on page 10 of the guidelines shows, or you can have a more informal agreement. Set a meeting date, get on your pastor's calendar. Don't wait for them to contact you because they're busy people too. Keep regular appointments and be prepared when you meet. When you know what you need to discuss. You might want to give them a heads up sometimes, but know what you need to discuss when you're there so it's a good use of everyone's time. The lay leader continues to study and train and to develop a growing understanding of the church's reason for existence and the types of ministry that will most effectively fulfill the church's mission and will help strengthen the lay leader's own work. I can't tell you, I showed you the guidelines in the Book of Discipline. We are holding a district training tonight. Thank you for being here. Lay servant ministries. Everyone is recommended to be a certified lay servant, and it only takes one basic class and one advanced class. There's a lay leader webinar on discipleship ministries that's very helpful. There's a book called Job Descriptions and Leadership Training from the Discipleship Ministries. It's a leader development guide, and that'll help you in your church to train leaders and build your leadership pool up for people who are coming up. You want to train them up into leadership so you're not the lay leader for forever. I would suggest connecting with conference level trainings. There's going to be a budget meeting, a budget webinar for annual conference. Connect with the communications at the conference level and go on the internet and read about general conference church or general church articles and recommend those or share them with your congregations. And here it is, says spiritual gifts assessment. I can't emphasize that enough. If you have a passion, someone can help you find a way to use that passion. Believe me, if you have a passion, they'll use it.
Susan touched on this a little bit, but we really think it's important for lay leaders to be certified lay servants. I think it's one of the most important programs that we have in our district and in our conference. And as Susan said, a basic course and one advanced course that will allow you to be a certified lay servant. There are many courses. You learn about the Methodist Church. You learn about our origins and how our church is structured. You can learn about prayer. There is a class going on right now that is specifically about prayer. There are there are all kinds of wonderful classes, and some of them we have a partnership with the Oregon and Washington conferences in the Northwest, and also with California, where we have Zoom classes, and Susan's showing some of those. So we have wonderful ways to connect across the country, and learn and grow. And so many of them are available on Zoom, and so it makes it a lot easier than driving to Burlington in the winter, which I have done before. Zoom is much more comfortable sitting in your own home. But I would really encourage you to look into that. It's a little difficult right now to see that on the conference website, but Susan and I will endeavor to give that information to you all when we get it and send it along to you. Now, the fun stuff that lay leaders get to do is be on a lot of committees. The charge conference, church council, pastor, parish or staff parish relations committee, finance committee, and the nominations and leadership development committee. Now, if you're lucky, kind of like I am, we have a single board governance at my church, so we do a lot of that stuff all at the same time. But one of the things that I was reading is we tend to have our ad council and our SPRC meetings as meetings. Like, we've got an agenda and we're going to get through this and we're going to do whatever that it takes to get through it and be done. But what about lighting a candle when you're in that meeting to represent the light of Christ? What about reserving a chair, leaving an open chair at the table, representing Jesus? Or what about a symbol of the Holy Spirit being present in your meeting? Like I said, sometimes we just, like, we're going to do the business, get through with it. But we need to be mindful of whose business we're doing and what we are about. You are, as a lay leader, you are also a voting member of all of those committees. And you serve then as interpreter of the decisions that are made in those meetings to the rest of the congregation. To be better equipped to comply with the responsibility, it's recommended that a lay leader serve as a member to annual conference, so then you at least know what's going on in the larger church.
So meetings. Cindy told you about all the church meetings. But the purpose of a lay leader is to connect the church with the community, to bring the church into the community in mission and ministry. But the purpose of a lay member to annual conference is to connect the church with the annual conference. So if you're the lay leader and you also serve as the lay member to annual conference, you get to wear two hats. And for me, it's just really good to go to annual conference. Lay members, how many of you, let me go to my big screen now. How many of you been to annual conference? John, have you been to annual conference? So everybody's been to annual conference. Did you know that it's the lay member's job to report back what all happens at annual conference? Well, some people are more successful at that than others. So as a member to annual conference, prepare, attend the pre-conference briefings, learn the process, general knowledge of the book of discipline. You guys already know all this stuff. Understand the issues and note concerns. One of the things, I can read a petition and I think, oh, well, I like this. This is really good. But I would recommend getting your pastor's input, getting your DS's input. Not that it will skew your vote, but sometimes there are underlying things that a petition does that we don't know that might be an unintended consequence, and they would know that. And those are the kinds of things that I want to know before I vote. What is the impact that this could have down the road? Says participate, attend the ladies session, attend the business sessions. All right, I'm just going to, Chris, plug your ears. I'm just going to say this right now because the lady attend all the sessions and the clergy misappears somewhere in the afternoon, it seems like. Make informed votes, participate in worship, attend the plenaries, Bible study sessions, and explore all the displays. Journal. For me, the journaling was important because then I had a way to report back to my community, my church, my peeps. And I went to First downtown Colorado Springs when I was lay leader there. And they would hold the church newsletter for me so I could get my article in to let everybody know what happened at annual conference. Share the news of the conference and opportunities for participation throughout the year. You know, Cindy and I try to get information out to our leaders, and we don't know where it goes, if it gets to the churches or if it just stays in the lay leaders' inbox. Share that stuff so people know the opportunities for lay servant ministry training, for district events, for I don't know, Chris does these cool little chats and keeps us up to date on what's happening in the district. Explore possibilities of district or conference committee service. We have some needs on our leadership roundtable for people in the northeast section of the state. And we do have some vacancies on the conference committee. So if you know of someone who would be good in those, please share their names with Chris and let him talk with them. That's what I have.
Okay, Chris. I just saw your chat there. So who can, one of the things when I look at all the responsibilities of a lay leader, a local church lay leader, I think, my gosh, that's a lot of stuff. And then I go back to the scripture that Susan shared from 1 Corinthians 12. Talks about everybody has a gift. And you may not be really great at everything that's on that list of 9, 10, 11 things that we listed. But I'm sure you're good at a few of them, and I'm sure you know somebody else that's good at some of the others. So you can enlist other people. And if you're not sure, this is a little book called Your Spiritual Gifts Inventory. And it's very helpful in identifying what your specialty is, what your gifts are, what you're good at. And you can always enlist somebody else to help you with some of those other things. what the people and agencies that can help? Your pastor, your fellow active lay people in the congregation, a former lay leader like Marianne Tabor, so to be a mentor to you, people who live in your community who are wise and know how to organize things. And then Susan and myself, as district lay leaders, we'd be happy to, if we don't know the answer to the question, we'd be happy to find it out for you and get that information to you. Also, the conference lay leaders, we have 3 of them. We're going to have some new ones coming on this after annual conference this year. But there are conference lay leaders who are wise and know a lot of things about what's going on. As you travel, we'd encourage you to visit other congregations. If you're traveling to Missouri or California, and kind of see how they organize their church and what their members are involved in. And then there is a webinar, the Local Church Lay Member to Annual Conference, What's My Job? It's available at Discipleship Ministries website. One of the things I meant to ask is, how many of you have been to lay servant training? Oh, yay. Well, there's going to be some coming up. So we encourage you to, again, take part in that as it comes to you and becomes available to you. And with that, Susan and I would really like to thank you for being here with us. And we want to open it up for questions. So it's Stump the Lay Leader, the district lay leader time.
That might not be too hard. I just wanted to say, if you haven't done lay servant ministry training, Colorado Front Range is going to be offering a basic class later in May. And as soon as we hear what the dates are on that, we'll get that out to you. We stumped them all, Cindy.
Yeah, so not just questions, but if you've been serving in this role in your church and there's something you think should be added, that this is a great time for that.
And we were going to ask if people have had laity Sundays, how they do that. First doesn't do that. They're televised. They just don't do that. And so I don't have any experience with that, but I'm now I go to the Prairie campus first. And so it's a smaller church and we might have that opportunity. So how do you recognize your laity on Laity Sunday? Marianne.
We haven't done it recently at Good Shepherd. We've sort of had pastors of short duration, but there was a time when the laity would just plan the service. There would be a laity speaker. You know, it was that kind of a thing. And usually it's short and sweet, but it's good. I would want to add just one thing to what you all have said. I always considered being a lay leader as part of a partnership with the clergy, because the lay leader represents the laity in the congregation. And it's important that those 2 or 3 or 15 people, however many you have, all work together.
Absolutely. Susie.
I have a question. I'm going to be an equalizer this year at conference. My first opportunity to do that. am I going to be required to go around to some of the smaller churches and tell them what happened at conference? If they want me to? You know what?
I don't think you're required to do that, but that would be very nice if you wanted to. You know, I too have been and am going to be again an equalization delegate. We're just balancing out the number of clergy who attend annual conference.
Right, but and maybe I'm assuming wrong, I just figured that some of the really small churches don't have a lay leader, and that's why we have to have equalizers to balance out. And I thought maybe if y'all drew a line and told me, you know, I could go in this circle, you know, and I would try to do that if that's part of being an equalizer, you know, equalization.
And I don't think it's required, but it would be really nice if you want to do that.
Okay. And second question, when will we get our code so we can sign up for the annual conference?
That's a really good question because the codes haven't been given out yet, is my understanding.
I've got them. They sent them to us. So as soon as I am able to get my act together and get those out to everybody, I will. So that should be soon.
I can still sign up for the hotel without that, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
to sign up for the actual conference, I need that number. Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
One of the things that we've done before is like when people come in on Laity Sunday, we have asked them, what committee have you ever served on? Have you ever been a Sunday school teacher? Have you ever been an usher or served on a board or a committee? One year we gave, I don't remember, we gave them like colored flowers. Another year we gave them different colors of little clothespins. So everybody had a clothespin on their dress or their shirt. And some people had lots of clothes, like, you know, the trustees people. And then we, during it, we recognized people in kind of a theme of the kaleidoscope of talent and the kaleidoscope of people who are willing to work, all the different, you know, even people who put money in the offering plate, we recognize that too. This was an idea that I got from, was either Lyman or Burlington years ago. Somebody sent me that, like a script for that. And we've done it a couple of times in our church. So I think everybody got it, one or two little clips or flowers with different colors to represent what they've done.
I think when you're doing that, you also have to be sure that you recognize people who attend worship.
That was part of it. Yeah. That was part of it. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody was recognized in one or two ways. Yeah.
Some of you have already heard this because I use it at most of the charge conferences. But one of the images that has stuck with me over the last 5 years is the image of a disciple as a sheep from the front and a shepherd from the back. That each of us is on that lifelong journey of following and trying to find those models for us, and our lay leaders are some of our, hopefully some of our best models for what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And the other part, though, that we often don't think about is that there's somebody watching us. Lay leaders need to know that people are looking to us, to you, for as a model. They're not necessarily going to ask you what it means to be a disciple. They're going to watch what you do, and so trying to craft a Jesus-shaped life is a task for each and every one of us. And so, and trying to not just be the only one, trying to encourage everybody to know that about themselves, right? That they're There are so many people in the pews who don't see themselves as worthy to be followers of Jesus, to be disciples. And we need to help them to see that they are an integral part of the body. So I think that's a huge part of what the lay leader does. All right. Anybody else have anything else that you'd like to share? We've still got time, so if anything comes up in the rest of our time together here, please feel free. Now, when we've got slides up, we can't necessarily see your face, so you may need to just go ahead and unmute and butt in to if you've got something to say during the course of the presentation. So, all right, Cindy and Susan, do you have anything else? All right. Well, let's give them a jazz hand salute, everybody. Thank you so much for Cindy and Susan doing what you shared with us tonight. Very good. You. All right. Now I'm going to start with mine. So let's see, I'll don't even do that quite yet. So church council chairs and lay leaders, the reason we're doing this together tonight is that there are a number of things that are going to sound familiar between these two roles in the church. And so don't be surprised when that happens. Some of you have probably played both of these roles before. All right, let's see what we got. All right. I'll be to move. There we go. Okay, so here we go. What is the church council? These are some interesting ways of thinking about it that I don't think we do all the time. So it's the executive agency of the charge conference between its yearly gathering, guiding and furthering the ministry of the congregation. So that church conference or charge conference that we have once a year is where kind of the identity of the church is lodged, and the church council is doing the work of the charge conference during the year. So we want to keep that in mind. That's an interesting way to think about the church council. The council creates and supervises the strategic plan for an effective congregation. So the council is always looking ahead to what needs to happen to keep the congregation effective in what it's doing. We'll talk a little more about that. Reflects the character and population of the congregation. So there should be some diversity in the church council to try to represent the demographics of your church family in every way that there is to do that, right? We start with gender and age. We want to have a good spread of those things, thinking about ethnicity, about gender identity and orientation. Those are all things that we want to be paying attention to in our life together. Finally, church council, we used to call it the administrative board, right? And some still do. But administration, just look at the kind of the etymology of that word. It has minister in the middle, and minister means to give aid or service. Then the prefix ad, to make that administer, means to move in the direction of or to increase. So imagine administration not just as a boring kind of nuts and bolts thing, but as giving aid or service, moving in the direction of giving aid or service to increase the ways that we give aid or service, I think is a fruitful way to think about what the church council is about. So there's several kind of themes that a church council is involved with: envisioning and planning, then implementing, then evaluating. We're going to look at each of these in several different ways tonight. Envisioning and planning. So the church council is always about holding the big picture, the vision of how the congregation lives into its mission. And the mission of our United Methodist Church is making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So our vision is about the why. Why are we doing that? Why are we making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world? Our vision is about our aspiration, right? Mission is the what and the how, describing the strategies that lead to achieving that vision that we attain. One of the things about the church council is that it needs to resist micromanaging. Now, that's not always possible, and we'll get to that too, especially in smaller churches, smaller communities. Often the church council really is micromanaging. It's really getting stuff done. But always the goal of the church council is not to get stuck in the micromanaging, not to get stuck in the nuts and bolts of making things happen, but always to look at everything through the lens of that mission of making disciples, right? That we always want to look and see is what we're doing here furthering that mission. We'll have a kind of a test phrase you can use here in a little bit. So preparing for the future and making plans for that future as feasible and possible, right? So where do you need and want to be a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 20 years from now as a congregation? Who are the people that you need to be ready to serve? What changes in technology, culture, economy, and social issues are coming, and how do you need to prepare for those things as they are coming? And finally, you model yourself the intentional and continuous learning and growth integral to discipleship and following Jesus. This is just like lay leaders, church council chairs are showing people how to lead, showing people how to be disciples in the world, showing people how to look at everything through that lens of mission, right? Because people get in a twist over all kinds of stuff, right? They'll get focused on one little thing that they get upset about, or they disagree with, or that they want to see happen. And all of a sudden they're seeing everything through the lens of that one thing. And it's the responsibility of the church council and his chair to pull everybody back to the big mission and say, okay, that's important, but how does that fit in the bigger picture? We'll talk more about what the education part looks like. All right, so after we envision and plan, we have to implement. So the church council is about managing and administering the ongoing life of the congregation. It oversees and coordinates ministry among the various teams and committees of the congregation. In smaller churches, the council may actually be the group that works together to make things happen in that church. In undertaking all of those efforts in the life of the church, keeping the main thing is so crucial, and that's the role that the church council has. So I have it here that you have a so that statement for everything the congregation does. So you say, we do X so that Y. Right? You try to figure out what's our reason for doing this, and how does that fit our mission? We do X so that disciples grow in our church, right? That's the kind of, use that as kind of a test phrase. You're all about empowering members of the congregation to grow discipleship as they participate in the life of the community, right? And then we always think about what our goals are and then what our strategies are. And they're two different things, right? The goal is the guiding purpose. Where do you want to be? What do you want to put in place or accomplish? That's kind of along the lines of that vision. The strategy says, how are we going to get there? It's kind of along the lines of that mission, right? So after we implement, then we evaluate. And this is really important for us these days. We constantly have to seek ways for the congregation to be more effective in its kingdom work. This is a great distinction to make. Always know the difference between in the groove and being in a rut. You all kind of know how this works in your own life, right? When you're in the groove, it means you are on task, that you have an idea of where you're headed, that you are really feeling like the Spirit is moving with you, and you are moving with the Spirit. You're seeing results and things happening in the groove. It's like, an athlete or a musician or an artist, right? Where they get into that zone where they are just able to do what they are called to do in a really productive and effective way, as opposed to being in a rut. And this is something, where we keep doing the same things that we've done and we keep getting the same results, right? We talked about Einstein's phrase that he used, right? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting something different to happen. That's being in a rut, right? So part of what we need to do is come up with metrics, ways of measuring that truly reflect the effectiveness of the church's work. So we turn in statistics every year, and this is really important for lay leaders and church council chairs to participate in getting those statistics turned in every year, because we need those numbers for a lot of different reasons. For the larger church, for the conference, we have an idea of trends that are happening in our life together. But you need to come up with other metrics that fit your church family, and the context that you are in. So I just put a couple that came quick to the top of my head. How many of our people are involved in small groups? What are the outward and visible signs of growth in discipleship here. They're not straight numbers, right? These could be narrative answers to these things, descriptions that we have, pictures we can paint of what's going on in our life together. And then even just in your council, it's really important to be able to evaluate your work together as a church council. So there are a few questions here that might help with doing that. How are we doing at making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world? How are we doing at that mission? What's going well? What's not going so well? And there may be something that needs to change or even go away in life together. Oftentimes, one of the tests you can kind of give yourself. We always want to start doing new stuff. There are new things we want to do, but everybody has a limit how much they can do. So sometimes what the church council can do is have a stop and start test. So if you have a new thing you want to do, a new thing you want to start, before you engage that, that's your start. But what's your stop? What are you going to stop doing so that the people who need to put energy into the start, what do you need to stop doing so that those people will have that energy and bandwidth and space to be able to do that new thing? All right. So here are the just basic responsibilities of a church council. Planning and implementing programs for nurture, outreach, witness, and resources in the local church. And you can see all the different things involved in what you do in the church. Our list are kind of incorporated in those 4 areas: nurture, outreach, witness, and resources. Council provides for the administration of the church in its daily life. And we remember what administer means, right? Carry out the actions approved by the charge conference. So that's that role of being the executive agent of the charge conference. Meet at least quarterly to do all of this. The church council is where the review of membership of the church lies. We'll see in a little bit that the membership secretary is one of the members of the church council. One of the things I say at charge conferences every year is that the nominations report is kind of a living document. And this is where that comes in. The church council is responsible to fill interim vacancies among lay officers between charge conference meetings. So we try to affirm and approve that nomination slate every year. But if there are openings during the course of the year, it's the responsibility of the church council to figure out who is going to take those roles. This group recommends the salary for the pastor and staff to the charge conference to be approved, and for the budget, helps with the budget. The compensation comes on recommendation from the SPRC, and one of the things that I had not done a really good job of encouraging churches to do until the last year or so is to make sure that there is a housing form that is approved by the church council every year that describes the housing compensation of the pastor, whether it's a parsonage or if there's a dollar amount. It's really important, not as much for the church as it is for the pastor and their tax situation. In case they ever got audited, that would be a way to help them out. All right, let's see. Before we do that, anybody have any comments or questions before we? Oh, wait a minute. I just do. Come away. Sorry. Hold on. There we go. Any comments or questions before we move on to next things?
I want to know how to get out of a rut and move into the groove.
All right. Well, I'm open to anybody's input on this. I would say the first step, and this is the hardest one, is to recognize you're in one, first of all, and then beginning to figure out what it looks like to not be in it. And I think some of the brainstorming is one of the tools we've used for a long, long time. Thinking about, if you think about something that you're doing as being in a rut, maybe make the connection back to what would create the rut. A wagon might, if we think back a few years, wagons created ruts in those roads. how would a wagon get out of the rut? What would you need to do? Right? It would probably involve having the horses go in a different direction. It might involve some people getting out of the wagon and manually lifting it and moving it. And so thinking of that rut that you're in, maybe it's that event that you have every year that when you ask that question, is this helping us make disciples for the transformation of the world? And you think, I just don't see it anymore. There was a time when we thought it was really beneficial for the life of our church, but it's not so much anymore. So then thinking, how do we do that in a loving way? Right? That's because oftentimes there's somebody connected with that event who is a saint of the church and can't imagine not doing it anymore. And so it's going to take some tact and some care and compassion to do that. All those sacred cows are sacred cows for a reason, right? All right. Any other thoughts, questions? That wasn't a great answer, Marianne, but
That helps.
all right. Well, let's move on to the next thing. So that's a lot of the stuff the church council does. And this is who the church council is. So the nominations and leadership development team would have somebody here, and the pastor is the chair of this nominations and leadership development team, but you might have another representative from the group serve on your church council. Someone from the staff parish relations committee, someone from the trustees, the finance committee chair. And you'll notice, I mean, the finance committee is made up of a lot of the same people that make up the church council. And that's one reason that a single board governance can catch on in some places, because there is a lot of overlap. The lay leader, the lay member of annual conference, the financial secretary, and the church treasurer. We came to our finance committee training. We talked about how important that you have two different people doing those two roles. So if you're not sure about that, go on our YouTube page and watch that training. The membership secretary. So this is one of those deals that the church council, it's important to pay attention to in the summertime, because in the fall you're going to have your charge conference and you're going to have those lists of people that need to be removed. And you need to have a process for keeping track of attendance and all the people that join, the people who die. Membership secretary should be on the church council. Then the church council chair. And then there are these things over on the right that are additional functions that are kind of related to different programming of the church. So Methodist Men, United Women of Faith. You hope to have a youth member of your church council and a young adult on your church council, and then the pastor serves. And this is a question I get all the time. The members present and voting at any announced meeting constitute a quorum. So you don't have to have half your council there. You don't have to have 2/3. Whoever shows up votes, and that's the way that happens. All right, now we're going to skip to anybody have any questions about about the makeup of the church council? Yeah, Susie.
I have been elected as a mission chairperson because Wesley has a lot of missions. Am I allowed to go to the church council?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, thank you,
Okay,
Susie.
they've been inviting me, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I knew I should have put this on there last night. I didn't do it. So there should also be a bullet here for at-large members of the church council. The church council can have at-large members, and any other group in the church that the church council would like to have a representative from can also be on the church council. So these are kind of basic roles, but the church council can expand and do different things and have different members in addition to these. It's just one of those things that the church council has the power to set that up and to make that happen. Good question.
Yes, I'm assuming if your church had a daycare center, a representative from that person should be on the council too.
Could be, yeah. I mean, most do who have one, but it wouldn't be required necessarily. You might have, for example, you might not be the director, but you might have a board
Representative.
Somebody who represents it. Yeah. Great. Okay, now let's talk about the chair, what the chair is up to in the course of this work. Look at the clock, see where we are. Okay. Obviously, leads the council in fulfilling its responsibilities. That seems pretty straightforward. But there's some pieces of that. And some of this goes back to the things that Susan and Cindy were sharing as well as things that are important for lay leaders to be conscious of. The church council chair should be intentional in your own spiritual life so that you can remind everyone that the work of the church is holy, worshipful work. Oftentimes it's easy for us to see our church as an institution more than the body of Christ. And one of the things that the church council chair can do is to help draw us back. That's part of that, seeing that big picture, part of the vision being so important for us and the church council. Be intentional in growing as a leader by enhancing practical leadership skills. If you're not really good at leading meetings, if you're not really good at keeping a calendar, if you're not really good at organizing stuff, there are ways to get better at those things. And so being able to take that seriously is important. And this is interesting. Help the council lead the congregation away from being merely an activity-based church toward embracing its identity as a faith-forming community. I think this is huge for us today. I think the churches that are focused on being activity-based communities of faith are missing out and are leading our people in a way that is part and parcel of the decline and death of local churches and our denomination. We've got to be thinking of ourselves as a faith-forming community and what that means for us. All right, then the chairperson is entitled to attend meetings of all the boards and committees of the church unless specifically limited by the Book of Discipline. And I think there might be some meetings of the SPRC that the church council chair would not be invited to attend. I find it hard to think of what else they might not be entitled to attend. And then we can always encourage the chairperson to attend annual conference, which is easier these days since we can do it online. You don't necessarily need to go physically. You could attend online. All right, next one is prepare and communicate the agenda of council meetings in consultation with the pastor and lay leader. This is one of those things that I personally am a part of a committee right now where the chairperson has not been providing agendas, and it is super frustrating for the folks who are wanting to accomplish things, because it's hard to tell how to participate in the meeting and what is going to take more time or less time in what you're doing. So here's just a few things that can help with that. So the church council chair should meet regularly with the pastor and lay leader to keep on the same page regarding several things: the current reality of the church, the desired reality of the church, and all the processes that are in place for effectiveness in ministry of the church. This is one that a lot of people, you've experienced this in other settings, but we don't always do it in our church council. But I would encourage you to do it because sometimes conversations get a little tense, right? And it's good for us to have some ground rules for how the church council works together. Kind of a covenant for how you work together. How are you going to communicate? How are you going to make sure that everybody is heard? How are you going to gently but firmly call somebody to account if they're not treating the group with respect, right? I mean, those are all things that can be done. And you can look these things up. You can Google church council covenant, and you're going to get some ideas for that. You may already in other groups that you're a part of have some ideas about that. Here's some nuts and bolts things. So for the church council chair, one of the things about church council, and this goes back to that big picture piece, is that we don't want it to just be a reporting session, right? And so what we want the church council chair to do is 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the meeting to send out an email, make phone calls, however you do it, to the representatives to the church council, asking for them to turn in written reports of what's been going on either in the last month, the last quarter, whatever it is, so that you can try to make a deadline a week before your meeting so that you can get all of those and see who needs to talk and which things are just things that folks could read, right? Anything that any group that reports something where a decision needs to be made, something needs to be decided. So you have a chance to craft your agenda based on all of that. Then the agenda itself, start off, have somebody do devotions or prayer to get you started. The minutes from the last meeting, you want to, if you send those out ahead of time, people have a chance to look at them. But all the items of business, you all have done this, old business, new business. And one trick that we don't often do is to set a time for these things. So to say, we're going to have this conversation for 5 minutes so that it doesn't drag out to 30, right? Or we're going to take 10 minutes or 20 minutes on this particular item, and then hold to that. And that'll help you to save space for this last item. The meeting should not consist merely of reporting on ministry, money, and maintenance, and should give adequate time to the vision horizon. So you should always, as you craft that agenda, if you're going to take an hour and a half for a meeting, make sure you're setting aside 15 to 20 minutes at the end to do the visioning work, or to start doing the visioning work. You can determine how you want to arrange your meeting, but always make sure that that is scheduled. And if there are particular ways that you want the council to be thinking and things that you want them to be looking at, make sure those are incorporated there. All right, the chairperson also reviews and assigns responsibility for implementing actions of the council. This is really important. The chairperson is not the one who is supposed to do everything that the council decides needs to get done, right? So it's really important. Several different things. When decisions get made, be sure to include in the minutes of the meeting the deadline or target date for each of those action items that you got, and also the names of the person or people who have signed on to be responsible to make it happen, right? And then several weeks prior to your next meeting, or several weeks after that meeting, follow up with those folks and see how it's going. And if they need any help, if they're stuck, give them some ideas about how to be unstuck would be really good. And finally, you always want to celebrate the accomplishments of your church council and of your congregation. Make sure that you celebrate those things, and not just in your meetings. You might have a monthly slot in worship where one of you from the church council gets up and celebrates something that's going on in the life of the church. And you know, people love to hear what's going well, right? And this translates back to stewardship. Even people give to mission, not to survival. So if you are in the habit of celebrating the ways that you are making disciples and changing the world, that's going to translate into people being excited about the ministry of your church. Next one, communicate with members of the council and others as appropriate so the council can make informed decisions. So this is one of those things where you and the lay leader and the pastor get together, and in your conversations, these things may come up. What are some of the things that are happening that are going to happen that may block ministry? Conflicts on the calendar is a favorite in our churches, right? Or maybe we don't have enough information about particular things. It may be a missional thing in the community. It may be about a particular person in your church. There may be something going on in their life that nobody knows about, but everybody is noticing that there's something. Information is obviously a broad category, but just looking for the things that may be a problem. Ask a lot of questions, and especially about the things that everybody's doing in the church. The church council chair is often in a lot of conversations about what's going on. Being able to ask groups questions that are connected with keeping that vision primary in the life of the church. So asking folks, how is that activity enriching the lives of the people who are involved in it, or bringing people closer to Christ? What are the things that really have potential in this church? Who are the people that we are not tapping into their gifts, as Susan and Cindy were talking about. Finally, this is a big one. Communication. Everybody always complains about communication not being good enough, right? And so one of the things that you as a church council chair and member of the church council as a lay leader can do is to make sure you're taking advantage of all the ways of communication that make sense for your church. And I say that because there are some churches where snail mail is still the preferred method of being in touch, right? Getting that hard copy newsletter in the mail is vitally important. There are churches where they've totally done away with anything going through the U.S. Postal Service. It's all digital, one way or the other. What's right for your church? Is social media right for your church? Facebook or Instagram, or do you have some folks who love making TikTok videos that would be a way to communicate in your church? Are you recording things and putting them up online for people to engage with later? Figuring out the best ways to communicate is super important for the church council. All right, coordinate the various activities of the council. Make sure that there's a comprehensive calendar that's maintained, and doesn't have to be the church council chair or the lay leader doing it. It could be a staff member, could be the church secretary, could be some other volunteer in the church, but make sure there is one calendar that has everything on it, a master calendar. And be aware of possible connections and common threads, because sometimes we duplicate efforts. And if you're sensing, as you have your fingers in a bunch of different places in the life of your church, if you're sensing that this person over here, Jane over here, is having a similar idea to Joe over here, one of the things that the church council chair and the church council can do is bring those people together to talk through what might be possible, and more possible if there were the energy of two people rather than one, especially if there were two that are gonna be butting heads or trying to do the same thing. Participate in leadership training offered by the district conference and the domination, as well as taking responsibility for the council's collective learning. So here are a few areas, some questions that kind of lead you down this path. The first four for you personally, and the fifth one for the council as a whole. What do you know about the workings of your local church and the United Methodist Church? Especially if you're newer to the community or to the congregation, there may be some work to do to figure that out. We have a lot of non-United Methodist folks who are involved in our churches and get involved in leadership, and they're incredibly confused by the way that we as Methodists do things. So being able to provide resources for your church council for you, first of all, to learn these things, and then for your church council to become familiar is really helpful. Next one, what's your knowledge of God, Jesus Christ, and your faith commitment? Can you tell others about your spiritual journey and life as a follower of Jesus? This is one of those things I think really at the heart of some of our problems as a denomination is that we don't pay enough attention to how it is that we can share why the church is important to us, why our faith is important to us. And you don't have to be a fire and brimstone preacher out there in the community with all your friends, right? There's a thing called an elevator speech. How much you can say in the time that the elevator is between the time you get on the elevator and you reach your destination floor. In most of our communities, that's not many floors, right? So it's got to be short, 15, 20 seconds about why you remember your church and why Jesus Christ is at the center of your life. Important things to be able to do. Then what do you know about how to get things done? This is that practical leadership stuff, leading meetings, organizing resources, visioning and planning, monitoring that big picture. And what is your experience of working with others, resolving conflict, motivating, etc.? People skills. What are the people skills you bring to your work? And how can you improve those? And finally, this is the church council. Every agenda for every meeting could have a slot for some learning together, whether that's Bible study, some other book that somebody has been reading, they want to give a report and lead a short discussion on, could be a video that you have. But what's important or useful for your council to know and then to learn together. All right. That's it. Who's got something to say? Questions or comments about any of that? It's a lot of stuff. I really encourage you to get the guidelines quickly, because both of our presentations tonight draw from those heavily, and then there are other resources as which Cindy was pointing out, or Caesar, like discipleship resources website for the denomination. There are a number of different training resources on there, videos and all sorts of other stuff. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Okay.
Yeah. As a council chairman myself, I read the document, the guideline. Took quite a while, but I finally made it through. It's pretty intimidating. There's a lot of responsibilities there that, you know, it takes somewhat of a hero to be able to pull all those off. I think it's good that we have something that gives us those guidelines. But boy, it varies. It is going to vary from church to church to church, depending on your resources, depending on your person capabilities. All those things come into play.
Very much.
You know, a lot of times I think we probably wing it, and maybe we come close to hitting the mark, and maybe not. And a lot of churches, of course, get so bogged down in the mundane facility issues and things like that that it's hard to grasp the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking about our little church in Beulah and how receptive that small group is to some of these traditional kinds of things, like in the guidelines that we should be doing. I was going to say something, but I won't. Yeah, there was a comment one of our board members made here a while back about, well, we've had a teacher, now we want a preacher. And I'm thinking, looking at all the things in that guidelines, there's a lot of teaching that goes on. Yeah, we got to have a good preacher, but there's a whole lot of teaching that's supposed to be going on anyway. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, just giving my thoughts as a relatively new council chairman. I don't think anybody asked about my qualifications to do that before they hornswoggled me into the job. But there's a lot to it. I mean, it's kind of like it's a career.
Right. Well, let's hear the wisdom of the group.
Thing.
Yeah, let's hear the wisdom of the group. How do you deal with that? I mean, all this stuff that we
Skip, I think you could definitely have an assistant. There's nothing that says there can't be an assistant chairperson. You know, maybe find somebody who has a skill in a certain area. Yeah, sure you can.
Yeah, there are plenty of churches that have co-chairs of their church councils. Yeah. Who else has a word of wisdom about how daunting the position looks? Lay leaders the same way.
Use your resources. Ask the person who did it before you how they juggled everything.
Yeah, some of us are better delegators than others, right? I mean, that's one of those deals where there are other people in your church who can do some of those tasks, right? And you can farm some of those things out. That's one of the reasons the single board governance model is so powerful, is that it is hyper aware that that council or that board is a visioning body. It's about keeping the vision straight. It's not about getting all the jobs done, but Kay Katan, who is one of the gurus for the single board governance, talks about even names it as a single board accountability structure, so that whoever is on that board is always reaching out to create task forces in ad hoc groups, groups that do specific jobs. I love the example, having some of our single board churches. If you're more interested in single board governance, there are resources to look into that. But one of the ways that an example of this, and it doesn't have to be a single board to do this. Oftentimes we elect as our trustees the guys. That's usually the guys. We elect the trustees, unfortunately, who know how to do plumbing or know how to do the handiwork around the building. Well, trustees have more responsibilities than just the building. So what if you have a building team or a facility team, right? Or the handy person team, right? So they don't have to show up at church council, but somebody on church council, maybe that trustee rep checks in with them regularly, and empowers them to do the things that need doing. Right? That's just one example of how that can work. So then the church council doesn't spend half their time at every meeting talking about the carpet or the plumbing or the gas or whatever it is to brief, whatever it is on the agenda. Yeah. So
I was
what else?
really struck by how so many of the responsibilities of the council chair and the lay leader and the need to work together. And I'm just picturing Cindy's clothespins, and in a small church you come in and you have a whole African necklace of clothespins because you serve in so many places. So Skip, I'm picturing you with a full necklace there.
Yep.
Just working together. It's all team, truthfully.
Right. Well, okay. Does anybody have anything burning on your heart or mind that you need to say or ask before we call it a night?
Just thank you, Chris. John Napier, I just really appreciate your coverage of all this. Yeah, I think it could be very overwhelming for a new chair, but on the same token, I appreciate that you've hit some high points about not micromanaging and passing on, especially in a smaller church community like all of ours out here in Southeast Colorado, the notion of honing in on what you can and try to keep visioning for the future. And I've got my first council meeting tomorrow night, and I've got some great thoughts. So thank you much, everybody.
Yeah, great. It's good to have you with us, John.
I'd add, Chris, too, that this forum, all of these training events that you've set up certainly beat being handed the book of discipline and say, go ye therefore and read no more. But putting some context to it, putting some examples to it, some things that people have tried and succeeded and tried and failed is a much better way to learn than to just read through the book. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis.
Susan and I would like to thank all of you for taking this time on a Monday night and joining us. And Chris, thank you also. We really appreciate your willingness to be here, and hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Definitely. All right. Well, can we close with a prayer? Cindy, would you be up for saying a prayer for us?
Gracious God, we are so thankful for the people who have joined us today. And we're thankful for the people that are going to watch this as it has been recorded. We thank you for these faithful servants who go about your business in their church and try to spread your love through their service. May we all be blessed with a restful night and be happy when the dawn comes. And we also pray that the wind will die out overnight. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, everybody unmute and say goodnight to each other.
Yes. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Farewell.
Nothing to it.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Everybody. Thank you for this.
All right.
Bye. Take care.